It's Calgary's podcast on the Cannabis Podcast Network.
Today's guest is Karen Barry, who is president of Barry Commercial Real Estate and founder of Beltline Cannabis Calgary. Welcome to the show, Karen, and thanks for taking the time today to be here for our listeners.
Thank you very much, Mario.
Tell us a little bit about Beltline Cannabis, its history, and how it started.
Well, Beltline Cannabis Calgary was a vision, and originally when I bought the building in 2011, it reminded me very much of Amsterdam, where I spent some time a long time ago bartending. And when I bought this building, I looked at it and I just thought, that's Amsterdam. And it was just, it put a smile on my face. So I bought the building.
Why did you get into this business?
It was really opportunity. I had the building. I had been turned down by 3 of the national, call it recognized cannabis retailers. And I couldn't understand why no one wanted this building to lease. And I ended up then working with a couple of people that weren't as well capitalized. And when I was reviewing their financials, I looked at it and thought, well, geez, my financials are certainly there as well. And so I took on the project.
What are the biggest benefits of doing business in Calgary?
Well, Calgary has been an ebb and flow. Barry Commercial was founded in 2007 after a 20-year career in investment sales, commercial real estate. And Calgary has always been such an entrepreneurial environment that the platform to jump to get even low-lying fruit was typically easier. I came from Ontario, which is much more of a hierarchy. I think that the decision-making in Calgary is flattened somewhat. So the opportunity is there for people that work really hard.
What are the biggest challenges of doing business here?
Well, the challenges have changed. So looking at 30 years ago, I think there were some challenges, gender challenges. In 1988 was the first time that women were even allowed in the Petroleum Club. I arrived here in 1994 with stars in my eyes and absolutely no background on any gender situation. So for me, it was just full guns blazing and away we go. As things have changed and evolved and prosperity and economic growth has happened here, we have started to see a bit more of an infrastructure on decision makers. So because these people have had such a successful uprun since, call it the early 90s, they have certainly grown their own organizations. So now we have a bit more layering in that decision-making process. So it's a bit more difficult to get to that CEO, that decision maker, but it's not insurmountable.
Why would you recommend Calgary to entrepreneurs who are just starting up a business?
Calgary is a mindset city. While we have been through these very large swings economically, it is about the mindset. Coming from Ontario, and again, this goes back many, many years ago, it was much more of where do you think you're going to get in life? And for me at that time, the aspirations were somewhere in middle management. It wasn't really sort of an initial goal of mine to own and run at this point 4 different companies. But as business evolved, it just made all the sense in the world. So I would say that it is a significant mindset difference between Calgary and I would even suggest to you versus Edmonton, versus Vancouver, versus Ontario. And those are all places that I have done business. And I think that Calgary sort of is out front with respect to that entrepreneurial spirit still.
Mm-hmm. Tell me a little bit about where you get your inspiration and your ideas, and where do you recharge?
Well, there's always balance in what I do is paramount, because as an entrepreneur, there is such an ebb and flow, and you do chase after, once you make a decision to go after an opportunity, It's very absorbing. You have to be passionate about it, because if you're not passionate about it, you've got a higher probability of failure. And let's face it, in small business, when 25% of small businesses are still in business after a decade, you can recognize how difficult that hill can be to climb. I'm happy to say that Barrie Commercial is 13 years old and Beltline Cannabis is 7 months old.
Tell me a little bit more about Beltline Cannabis. What are you excited about this business these days?
Well, Beltline Cannabis Calgary is a world-class, one-of-a-kind, eclectic retail cannabis experience. We are in the packaged goods industry, but really what we're selling is a human interaction. What we have noticed over the advent of artificial intelligence, the progress with computers, what we've noticed is that there is a disconnect with people interacting with people. So what we're selling here is that tangible, go talk to somebody. No, we're not doctors. We're not medical people. We will not give you medical advice. But at least you can go in and you can meet somebody that you're going to see there next week. Mm-hmm. So our bud tenders, they are the lifeblood of what we do here. And they have cult followings.
What's your vision for Beltline Cannabis?
Well, the vision ideally is to maximize what we can do here and as well contribute to the underlying fabric of the Beltline community. We believe that community and business have a symbiotic relationship. And through that, we need to be cognizant that as the out front people in this new industry within our city, we're stewards and we take that role seriously. So it's extremely important that we do contribute back to the community and also provide a service that we think people really want.
Tell me a little bit about the biggest challenges, I guess, you've faced in setting up the cannabis operation.
That I could sigh for a long time. It was the fastest run down the street I have had in my career. And every day I would wake up and I'm a list person. So every day I would have no less than probably 80 task items to get done when? Yesterday. So this went on for about 8 months from the time that we actually committed to making this a reality to actually opening the doors. And that stress level was palpable. I certainly credit the people around me to making it happen with me.
So when you look back in hindsight and what you know now, what you know now, how can that have helped you at the beginning?
I don't really think that there was too much that I know now that could have helped me more than follow your nose. So having already experienced various businesses, I was well prepared in terms of file setup, in terms of all of the moving parts that go into any business, not just this business. But you've got legal, you've got insurance, you've got administration, you've got printing, you've got promotion, you've got people, you've got product, you've got systems, computers, rent, city items, licensing, governmental relations. You have media relations. There are 100 different roads involved in not just cannabis, any business.
As an entrepreneur, what's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
The best piece of advice that I have ever received was very simple. Opportunity reveals itself at the time that you least expect. So while you might have fear and worry and all of those negative things that sit happily on one shoulder, while optimism sits on the other shoulder, it is a constant battle between the two of them to understand that you are good enough. You can do this, and people will pay attention. You just have to have the muster to make them listen.
Mm-hmm. I'll ask you a couple of personal type questions. What's on the top of your bucket list these days?
Well, right now I will be going down to California to do some personal development through the Hoffman Institute. And the Hoffman Institute is a world-renowned organization that is based in mindful work. Much of what is happening and the movement in terms of mental wellness, in terms of balance, is about being mindful. And that mindfulness provides an elevated level of, you can do it. You can do it. You need to be the promoter of who? Of yourself. And you're the most important advocate of what you're doing. So for me, I'm going down to do the Hoffman called a Q2 down in Southern California. And I attended the Hoffman here. I can't speak highly enough for this. Not just for people with significant issues. This is about people that have, if you're a workaholic, as am I. So my issue is about balance. How do you find that niche where family is good, work is good, and you're good? And let's not forget about the you're good. So for me, mindful behavior every day when I wake up helps me.
Mm-hmm. If you weren't doing what you're doing now, what kind of a career or profession do you think you'd like to do?
Well, a couple of things. First, doing what I'm doing now is $1 million question, because right now I've got about 4 projects on the go. If I wasn't doing what I'm doing now, people have asked me about running for mayor, which is a consideration. People have asked me about doing speaking to assist others in seeking their vision. I think that those are 2 areas that are important to me. Mental wellness, addiction, give back. Those are items where I get passionate about that. And I think that with Beltline, I will be afforded that opportunity. It will show itself to me, and then I'll take that road. Mm-hmm. But remember, opportunity reveals itself at the time that you least expect. So you need to be paying attention, because when it happens, you don't even know that it's there.
What book are you reading right now?
The most recent book that I read was called The Way of the Peaceful Warrior. And it is a book which identifies Dan Millman, who is or was part of the Olympic U.S. team. And he suffered some extreme tragedy. Ultimately, the book is about ego and how to manage through ego. And what happens what happens, as an example, in his life when he was going bigger, harder, stronger, faster, and ran his motorcycle into the ground and ended up crushing his leg. He's a gymnast. He fought back. He fought back without his ego. So things became a lot more difficult for him. And he still made the Olympic team. It was difficult, but not insurmountable. What I would suggest to people in terms of what I've taken away from that is that when you can manage through that negative Nelly sitting on that shoulder, I'm not good enough, I can't do this, why would I? I'm too old, don't have enough money. If you can manage through those things, then anything is possible.
Mm-hmm. If you had one word to describe yourself, what would it be and why?
The first word that comes to mind is colorful. Colorful is an easy word because there's so many different connotations towards colorful. You can be colorful in business. You can be colorful creatively. You can be colorful speaking. For me, color is what drives me every day. So depending on what that hour is or that afternoon or that morning is, it's about being passionate and colorful in what you're doing.
Mm-hmm. Is there anything that keeps you up these days, concerned about?
Well, my main concern is our city. And I thought about this one long and hard, and leadership is something that I'm also extremely passionate about. And leadership is never easy, but it is less taxing in a positive environment. But real leaders, not real leaders, colorful leaders, show their colors when times are very difficult. And I would suggest to you, Mario, Calgary, since Barrie Commercial started in the end of '07, we have had, let's say, half of those last 13 years in economic turmoil. And in that time, you will note that leaders rise to the top in tough times. So what we're seeing now is we are seeing the tsunami wave from our city council, marred with what we experienced for 4 years with our provincial governments, and then further through our federal stewardship. So I see that as probably the most single critical issue facing business today. It's trickle down. We double our taxes here. We have to pass on the price. The people come in, they get upset that they have to spend more money. Therefore, businesses don't hire people. Then what happens? People get laid off. Then what happens? They can't pay their taxes. Then what happens? They close their doors. So this is a bad cycle that we're in right now. And ultimately what I see, and I have not seen in any of the media, is where the heck are the budgets being cut? Okay? Because with the advent of computers, with the advent of artificial intelligence, our operating expenses are supposed to be going down. And that is not happening. What I found was super interesting when I started business was that if I had an employee, I would be okay with that employee. Sure, that employee is doing a decent job. But I don't have the resources to just have average people. Calgary shouldn't lower the bar to that. What we have to do is elevate our efficiencies. So I understand that no one wants to have the fear of layoff, but hey, we are capitalists. We have been on the receiving end of layoffs for effectively the last 6 of 13 years that I have had Barrie Commercial. Now, fortunately, I have a situation where I can hire people, where we do see some growth. Lucky me. Isn't that fortunate? But what we're seeing is an imbalance between government and capitalism. And that imbalance will only have a wider gap as we move forward if we don't take, and I hate to say it at this point in time, drastic action.
Mm-hmm. We're creatures of routine. Do you have a specific routine that you follow every day?
I have done a great deal of studies in improvisation, in public speaking, and one of the courses that I took, which was the forefather of improvisation, was a fellow by the name of Keith Johnstone, right from here in Calgary. And that was back when I was 17 years old. And through the teachings of Keith Johnstone and improvisation, I try to keep things fresh. You are taught to accept what is given to you. As an example, when you see improv and you see Eugene Levy and some of his interactions, then suddenly he is, forced to have a peg leg in front of an audience. You are not allowed to not accept what is given to you. So from a very early age, I was taught to understand that things are going to change and that you need to adapt. So I am a very unique person in terms of adaptability. So I don't need to know what's around the next corner, like as an example for this interview. In media, generally speaking, you would prepare. In this case, I actually didn't prepare because it gave me a jazz this morning when I woke up thinking, how am I going to answer these questions?
Here's one that you're probably not expecting. Tell me something that people don't know about you.
People don't know that I am the granddaughter of an Irish immigrant. So my grandfather came over here, and people don't know that I'm the youngest of 5 daughters. And all of my sisters are entrepreneurs as well. So quite unique, all very successful in their own given industry, but all entrepreneurs. So I don't know if it was the water in our house or the powdered milk or the margarine or, the Wella Balsam shampoo that was put into the Wella Balsam container from the No Name. We grew up extremely humbly. We grew up in downtown Toronto. I like to say we had a nice house, but no heat. So very, very humble beginnings. So what you see, which is easy for people to turn around and go, oh, look at that. It was probably your folks. By far, not my folks. Not at all. Just humble beginnings.
I'm going to ask you a kind of an odd question here. So imagine that we drop you off at some tropical island where there's no kind of electronic stuff, so no Wi-Fi and no ability to grab the internet or anything like that, except there's one phone booth there. Now, we're going to leave you there on the island. You can make one phone call to us to come and get you. How long do you think you would last there on the island and before you make that phone call? And what do you think you'd be doing on the island while you're there?
Well, I don't have a TV. I don't watch TV. I guess I would stay probably as long as the people on Survivor would stay, because, who needs to not lose a couple of pounds for sure. Mm-hmm. As far as on the telephone, those that know me, while I had a phone glued to my ear for 28 years, those that know me now know that I actually veer away from the phone. So I'm not a good candidate on the phone, so I would probably have an adverse reaction if I saw a phone booth.
And how long do you think it'd last?
40 days and 40 nights.
All righty. Is there anything you'd like to add, Karen, before you leave us today?
I just wanted to say thank you, Mario. Thank you to you and your organization. I want to say I have, again, turned the tables on this. I have watched your career for a very long time. And again, in the advent of media and content, you and your team are out front. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Karen. And thanks for joining us today.